Beneath the golden lies. The morning sun rose over Terminus Station, painting the metal corridors in shades of amber and gold. Nora Vex stood in the cargo bay of her ship, the Wandering Star, reviewing shipping manifests with growing unease. The numbers didn't add up, again. She ran her fingers through her short, dark hair, exhaustion pulling at her shoulders. 3 months of hauling freight between the colonies, and every trip showed the same pattern. Grain shipments marked for the outer reaches never arrived at their destinations. Medical supplies vanished somewhere between departure and delivery. The Council's logistics reports claimed everything was accounted for, but Nora's own records told a different story. Problem, pilot? Nora turned to find Ambassador Quenthus standing at her cargo bay entrance. The Council representative cut an imposing figure with smooth, crystalline skin that reflected the light in strange patterns. His voice carried the artificial warmth she'd learned to distrust over the years. "No problem," Nora said carefully. "Just double-checking the manifest." "Diligence is admirable." Quenthus stepped closer, his footsteps eerily silent. "The Council appreciates contractors who take their duties seriously. These supplies will bring great comfort to the colonies." Nora nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She'd heard the speeches 1,000 times. The Council provided, the Council protected, the Council knew what was best. But standing in her cargo hold, looking at containers marked for worlds she'd never actually delivered to, the words felt hollow. After Quenthus departed, Nora sealed the cargo and prepared for departure. The coordinates in her navigation system pointed to Brennan's Reach, a mining colony on the edge of Council space. It would be a 4-day journey through the void, plenty of time to think about the questions that kept her awake at night. Jace Marden stood on the observation deck of Brennan's Reach, watching the sunset over the red rock canyons that surrounded the colony. He'd been the colonial administrator here for 3 years, long enough to love the hardy people who scratched a living from this harsh world. Long enough to notice when things started to change. The new council directives had arrived 6 months ago. Restrictions on mining quotas, mandatory reporting on every colonist's activities, surveillance equipment installed in the central hub. When Jace questioned the necessity, the council's regional overseer had smiled that same empty smile and assured him it was for everyone's protection. Protection from what? Jace wondered. The colony had no enemies. The nearest pirates operated sectors away. The only threat to Brennan's Reach was the council's own policies, slowly choking the life from the settlement. Administrator Marden? Jace turned to find one of his aides, young Thomas Reeve, looking nervous. "What is it?" "Supply ship incoming. The Wandering Star. Captain Vex is requesting landing clearance." "Grant it." Jace felt a small spark of anticipation. He'd met Nora Vex once before, 6 months ago during her last supply run. She'd impressed him with her sharp mind and sharper tongue, unafraid to speak her mind in a galaxy that increasingly demanded silence. He wondered if she'd noticed the same troubling patterns he had. The Wandering Star touched down in a swirl of red dust. Nora emerged from the airlock, stretching muscles cramped from days in the pilot's chair. The dry air of Brennan's Reach burned her lungs, but she welcomed it after the recycled atmosphere of her ship. Jace met her at the landing pad, his tall frame silhouetted against the setting sun. He had the look of someone who'd spent time in hard places, strong and weathered, with gray threading through his dark hair. His eyes, though, held a warmth that surprised her. "Captain Vex, welcome back to Brennan's Reach." "Administrator Marden." Nora extended her hand, feeling the firm grip of his handshake. "I've got your supplies, though I notice the manifest is lighter than usual." Jace's expression darkened. "Council efficiency, they call it. Apparently we're consuming resources above our allocation." "Funny," Nora said quietly, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "I've been hauling full loads, but half of them never seem to reach their destinations according to my tracking." Their eyes met, and Nora saw her own doubts reflected there. For a moment, something electric passed between them, recognition and relief at finding someone else who questioned the world they lived in. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private," Jace suggested. "I'd like to buy you dinner. We have a decent tavern here, and the walls don't have council ears. Yet." Nora felt a smile tug at her lips. "I'd like that." The Rusty Bolt Tavern sat at the edge of the colony, a weathered building that had served miners for decades before the council arrived. Inside, the air smelled of cooking meat and local whiskey. Nora and Jace found a corner booth, away from the handful of other patrons. Over plates of roasted canyon hen and rough bread, they talked. At first, their conversation stayed carefully neutral, discussing weather patterns and mining yields. But as the evening wore on and the tavern emptied, their words grew more honest. "I've started keeping duplicate records," Nora admitted, her voice low. "Everything the council sees and everything I actually observe. The discrepancies are getting worse." Jace leaned forward, his eyes intense. "We've had 3 families disappear in the last month. The council says they requested transfers to other colonies, but I never saw the paperwork. Their homes were emptied overnight. Where do you think they went? I don't know. But I'm starting to suspect they didn't go anywhere willingly." The words hung between them, dangerous and undeniable. Nora felt her heart beating faster, from fear or excitement or both. She studied Jace's face in the dim light, noting the worry lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "This could get us both disappeared," she said softly. "I know." Jace reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch sent warmth through her skin. "But I can't keep pretending everything is fine. Can you?" Nora turned her hand over, lacing her fingers with his. "No, I can't." They sat like that for a long moment, 2 people who'd been alone with their doubts suddenly finding companionship in the darkness. Outside, the colony's lights began to dim as night deepened. The council's surveillance drones made their regular patrols, red lights blinking in the sky. "Stay here tonight," Jace said quietly. "The administrator's quarters are private. We can talk more freely there." Nora nodded, seeing the invitation in his eyes and accepting it. They were stepping into dangerous territory in more ways than one, but the alternative was continuing to live under the weight of lies, and she'd grown tired of that burden. They left the tavern together, walking through the quiet streets. Above them, the stars burned with cold fire, and somewhere among them the council watched. But for tonight, in this small moment of connection, Nora and Jace chose to believe in something beyond the golden lies they'd been fed their entire lives. The truth was waiting to be found, and they would find it together. Whispers in the void, Doctor. Mira Halstead floated through the abandoned research station, her magnetic boots clicking softly against the metal deck. The facility had been dark for 2 years, officially decommissioned due to structural instability. But Mira knew better. Abandoned council facilities always held secrets worth hiding. Her headlamp cut through the darkness, illuminating corridors choked with debris. She'd come here following a lead from a former colleague, someone who'd disappeared shortly after mentioning classified experiments. The council had scrubbed the station's records, but physical data cores were harder to erase completely. She found the main laboratory sealed behind a blast door. It took her 30 minutes to bypass the lock using equipment she wasn't supposed to possess. When the door hissed open, stale air rushed out, carrying the scent of old fear. The laboratory was pristine, untouched by the decay that marked the rest of the station. Equipment still hummed on standby power, and in the corner, a data terminal glowed with a faint blue light. Mira's hands trembled as she accessed the files. What she found made her blood run cold. Genetic experiments on human subjects, behavioral modification programs, psychological profiles on every major colony leader. The council hadn't been guiding humanity. They'd been studying them like insects, testing limits, measuring how much control they could exert before their subjects broke. One file stood out, marked with the highest security clearance. It detailed something called the Reduction Protocol, a contingency plan for dealing with human populations that became unmanageable. The details were clinical, horrifying in their efficiency. Mass relocations, forced sterilization, selective elimination. Mira downloaded everything to an encrypted drive, her mind racing. This information could shatter the illusion the council had maintained for centuries. But getting it out would be nearly impossible. Council surveillance monitored all standard communication channels. She needed someone the council wouldn't immediately flag. Someone who traveled between colonies legitimately. Someone like Nora Vex. Captain Owen Trace reviewed his orders with growing unease. His patrol cruiser, the Steadfast, had been reassigned from pirate interdiction to internal security. The target was a cargo pilot named Nora Vex, flagged for suspicious communications and irregular flight patterns. Owen had served the council for 15 years, believed in the mission of protecting humanity from itself, but lately his faith had begun to crack. Too many of his orders involved watching humans, not protecting them. Too many files on his console were marked for his eyes only, filled with surveillance reports on ordinary people whose only crime seemed to be asking questions. "Captain, we have Vex's ship on sensors," his second-in-command reported. "The Wandering Star, currently docked at Brennan's Reach." "Hold position," Owen ordered. "Monitor but do not engage." He studied the file on Nora Vex. Independent contractor, excellent service record, no criminal history. The only red flag was her habit of keeping duplicate records and questioning shipping discrepancies. Since when was diligence a crime? Owen made a decision that would change everything. Instead of reporting to his superiors immediately, he would observe first. If Nora Vex was truly a threat, he'd know it. But if she was simply someone who'd noticed the same inconsistencies he had, then maybe she was someone he needed to meet. Nora woke in Jace's quarters as dawn light filtered through the windows. His arm was draped over her waist, his breathing slow and steady. The night had brought them closer in ways that went beyond physical comfort. They'd shared fears and hopes, speaking truths they'd never dared voice before. Her communicator buzzed softly. Nora slipped from the bed, careful not to wake Jace, and checked the message. It was encrypted, routed through 3 different relays. The signature belonged to Dr. Mira Halstead, a name Nora recognized from scientific journals. "Captain Vex, I have information that will change everything. Meet me at coordinates attached. Come alone. Trust no council channels. Time is critical." Nora's pulse quickened. She dressed quietly, leaving a note for Jace explaining she had to check on her ship. The coordinates led to an abandoned mining claim 2 hours outside the colony by ground transport. She rented a rover and drove through the red canyons as the sun climbed higher. The landscape was beautiful and desolate, rust-colored rock stretching to the horizon. She found Dr. Halstead waiting beside a small research shuttle, looking exhausted and afraid. "You came," Mira said with visible relief. "Your message said it was important." Mira handed her the encrypted drive. "Everything on here proves the Council has been manipulating humanity since first contact. Experiments, control programs, plans for population reduction. If people see this, it will destroy the illusion of benevolent guidance." Nora felt the weight of the drive in her palm, understanding its terrible significance. "Why me?" "Because you're already questioning. Because you travel where others can't. Because you're one of the few pilots who might slip past Council surveillance." Mira's voice cracked. "Because I have nowhere else to turn. If I do this, there's no going back. There's already no going back." "Not for any of us." Nora nodded slowly, pocketing the drive. "I'll get this out. I promise." Back at Brennan's Reach, Jace woke to find Nora gone. Her note eased his immediate worry, but something felt wrong. He was pulling on his clothes when his security chief burst through the door. "Sir, we have a Council patrol ship in orbit. They're requesting permission to land and conduct an inspection." Jace's blood went cold. "On what grounds?" "They didn't say." "But Administrator, the captain specifically asked about the Wandering Star." Jace made his way to the command center, his mind racing. If the Council was investigating Nora, their conversation last night could have already been flagged. He needed to warn her. Captain Owen Trace met him in the landing bay, a tall man with military bearing and eyes that seemed to see too much. "Administrator Marden, thank you for your cooperation." "What's this about, Captain?" "Routine inspection. We're tracking suspicious activity in this sector." Owen's gaze was steady. "I understand you had a supply delivery yesterday from Captain Vex?" "Standard shipment. Is there a problem?" "That's what I'm here to determine." They walked through the colony, Owen asking questions that felt more like a test than an interrogation. Jace answered carefully, trying to gauge the man's intentions. There was something in Owen's manner that didn't fit the profile of a blind Council enforcer. When they reached the Wandering Star, they found it sealed and empty. Owen conducted his inspection methodically, but Jace noticed he seemed to be looking for reasons to clear the ship rather than condemn it. "Everything appears in order," Owen said finally. "Where is Captain Vex?" "Performing routine maintenance checks, I believe." Owen studied him for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, "Administrator, may I speak with you privately?" They moved to an empty storage bay. Owen glanced around, ensuring they were alone, then spoke in a low voice. "I've been reviewing surveillance reports for 3 months. The Council is watching everyone who questions their operations. You and Captain Vex are both on their list." Jace felt his heart hammering. are you here to arrest us? No. Owen's expression was troubled. I'm here because I've seen what happens to people on those lists. They disappear, and I'm starting to believe they don't deserve to. Why are you telling me this? Because I need to know if what I suspect is true. Is the council hiding something worth fighting for? Before Jace could answer, his communicator crackled. It was Nora's voice, urgent and afraid. Jace, I'm being followed. Someone's tracking my rover. I'm 20 kilometers out, heading back to the colony. Owen's face went pale. That's not us. The council must have sent a second team. Jace grabbed Owen's arm. Can you help her? Owen hesitated only a moment. Then he was running for his ship. Get to your command center. I'll bring her back. The rover's engine screamed as Nora pushed it to maximum speed. Behind her, 2 council enforcement vehicles closed the distance, their weapons charging. She'd been careless not checking for aerial surveillance. Now she was going to pay for that mistake. Her communicator crackled with an unfamiliar voice. Captain Vex, this is Captain Owen Trace of the Steadfast. I'm coming to your position. Hold on. Nora had no idea who Trace was or why he'd help her, but she didn't have options. The enforcement vehicles opened fire, plasma bolts tearing chunks from the canyon walls around her. Then the sky split with thunder as Owen's patrol cruiser dove from orbit, its weapons blazing. The enforcement vehicles scattered, but one burst into flames as Owen's targeting systems found their mark. The second retreated, damaged and smoking. Owen's ship settled beside Nora's stopped rover, kicking up clouds of red dust. The airlock hissed open and Owen appeared, gesturing frantically. Get in, now! Nora grabbed her bag and ran. She barely made it through the airlock before Owen was lifting off, the cruiser's engines roaring as they climbed toward orbit. Inside the ship, Nora found herself face to face with a man who just saved her life by attacking his own people. Owen's jaw was set, his knuckles white on the controls. Who are you? Nora demanded. Someone who just made the biggest mistake of his career, Owen said. Or maybe the first right decision. I'm not sure yet. Why did you help me? Owen looked at her, and she saw genuine anguish in his eyes. Because I'm tired of following orders that make me hunt people for the crime of asking questions. Because every instinct I have says the council is lying to us. And because if you have proof of that, someone needs to protect you long enough to share it. Nora pulled out the encrypted drive. I have proof. More than anyone could imagine. Owen's hands tightened on the controls. Then we're both traitors now. And we'd better make it count. They flew toward Brennan's Reach in silence, 2 people who'd just crossed a line they could never uncross. Behind them, council enforcement was already scrambling to respond. But ahead, waiting in the colony, were Jace and others who'd started to question. The whispers in the void were becoming voices, and soon those voices would become a roar. The prison beneath the stars. Lieutenant Cade Brennan had served on patrol duty for 6 years without questioning his orders. He believed in the mission, protecting colonies from threats both external and internal. But the coordinates his commanding officer had given him made no sense. They led to an unmarked system with no registered colonies, no mining claims, no reason for a patrol ship to visit. Sir, are you certain these coordinates are correct? His navigator asked. According to command, yes. Cade studied the sensor readings. There's a planet here. Class M, breathable atmosphere, but it's not on any charts. His crew exchanged uneasy glances. In space, unmarked locations usually meant trouble. They entered orbit cautiously, scanning the surface. What they found made Cade's blood run cold. A massive complex sprawled across a barren valley, surrounded by energy barriers and defense towers. The architecture was unmistakably council, but this facility didn't exist in any official records. Sir, I'm detecting life signs, the sensor officer reported, her voice shaking. Thousands of them. All human. Cade felt ice spreading through his chest. Take us down. Landing zone near the main structure. Sir, we don't have authorization. I said take us down. The ship settled on the rocky ground with a hiss of hydraulics. Cade armed himself and assembled a squad. Whatever this place was, they needed to see it with their own eyes. The facility's entrance stood open, as if waiting for them. Inside, the corridors were sterile and cold, lit by harsh white lights. The hum of machinery echoed through the walls. And then they heard something else. Voices. Human voices crying out in despair. They followed the sounds to a vast chamber filled with rows upon rows of cells. Behind the energy barriers, humans in tattered clothing stared out with hollow eyes. Men, women, children. All captive. All forgotten. Sweet merciful! one of Cade's soldiers whispered. Cade approached the nearest cell. A woman stood inside, her face gaunt but her eyes burning with defiance. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Lieutenant Cade Brennan, Human Defense Patrol." "What is this place?" "This is where they send us when we become inconvenient," the woman said bitterly. "My name is Sienna Cross. I was an engineer on Harrow's World until our colony asked too many questions about council resource quotas. One night, enforcement ships came. They took everyone. Said it was an emergency evacuation due to geological instability." "How long have you been here?" 8 months. Some have been here years." Cade felt rage building in his gut. "We're getting you out." He ordered his team to disable the cell barriers. Alarms shrieked as the energy fields collapsed. Prisoners stumbled out, disbelieving their sudden freedom. Sienna moved to Cade's side, her movements quick despite her ordeal. "There are more levels," she said. "Hundreds more prisoners below. And the council guards will be coming. Then we move fast." Cade looked at his squad. "Spread out. Free everyone you find. We're taking them all." They worked quickly, racing through the levels. Everywhere the story was the same. Colonies that had questioned, complained, or simply noticed the wrong things all disappeared under the guise of disasters or relocations. All imprisoned in this hidden hell, Sienna stayed with Cade, guiding him through the facility's layout. She'd spent months studying the guards' patterns, planning an escape she'd never thought possible. Now, with armed soldiers at her side, hope blazed in her chest. They reached the lowest level, where the newest prisoners were held. The cells here were smaller, crueler. Cade's fury grew with every cage they opened. Then the council guards arrived. The firefight erupted without warning. Plasma bolts scorched the air. Cade's training took over, returning fire with deadly precision. Sienna grabbed a fallen weapon, her hands remembering the feel of a rifle from her colonial militia days. "Get the prisoners to the ship," Cade shouted. The battle raged through the corridors. Cade's squad fought with desperate determination, covering the escape of thousands. Sienna fought beside him, her shots accurate despite months of captivity. In the chaos, they became partners, moving in sync, trusting each other with their lives. A guard appeared from a side passage, weapon aimed at Cade's back. Sienna fired first, dropping the threat. Cade turned, their eyes meeting for a heartbeat. Something passed between them, recognition and gratitude and something deeper. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me yet. We still need to get out of here." They reached the surface to find Cade's ship surrounded by freed prisoners. The loading ramps were jammed with people desperate to escape. More council ships appeared on the horizon, moving to intercept. "We can't fit everyone," the navigator said desperately. "Then we make multiple trips," Cade ordered. "Load as many as possible. Sienna, you're coming with us." "I'm not leaving people behind." "You're not. But we need someone who knows this place, who can testify to what happened here." Cade gripped her shoulder. "Please," Sienna nodded reluctantly. They crammed into the ship, bodies pressed together in corridors never meant for this many people. The ship struggled to lift off, overloaded and straining. Council ships opened fire as they climbed toward orbit. Cade's pilot performed miracles, weaving through the barrage. One engine took a hit, flames streaming behind them, but they kept climbing. In the crowded passenger bay, Cade found Sienna among the rescued prisoners. She was comforting a child who clung to her, tears streaming down both their faces. Cade felt something shift in his chest, seeing her strength amid the suffering. When they finally broke free of the planet's gravity, the crew cheered. But the victory felt hollow. Thousands remained on the surface, and council reinforcements would arrive soon. "We need to tell everyone," Sienna said, appearing at Cade's side. "If we stay silent, they'll cover this up like they always do." Cade made a decision that would change history. Communications open all channels. Human frequencies, colony networks, everything. "Sir, that's unauthorized." "Do it." When the channels opened, Cade activated his personal recorder. He'd been filming since they entered the prison. Now he uploaded everything. Images of the cells, the prisoners, the children behind energy barriers. He added his testimony, his voice shaking with rage. "My name is Lieutenant Cade Brennan. What you're seeing is real. The council has been imprisoning our people, disappearing entire colonies. They call themselves our protectors, but they've made us prisoners. I don't know if this message will reach you before they silence me, but I'm sending it anyway. Because humanity deserves the truth." He broadcast it across every frequency again and again on repeat. The council tried to jam the signal, but it was too late. Ships and nearby systems picked it up. Colony receivers captured it. Within hours, the images spread across human space like wildfire. Back on Brennan's Reach, Jace watched the broadcast with Nora and Owen gathered around a screen. The images of the prison made Nora weep. Owen sat in stunned silence, his last doubts about the council crumbling to ash. "They're monsters," Nora whispered. "They're worse than monsters," Owen said. "Monsters don't pretend to be your saviors while they cage you." Jace felt fury and vindication warring in his chest. Everything they'd suspected, everything they'd feared was worse than they'd imagined. "This changes everything," he said. "People won't be able to ignore this." "They'll try to discredit it," Owen warned. "Call it propaganda, fake images. Then we make sure they can't." Nora pulled out the encrypted drive from Dr. Halstead. "We have documentation that supports everything in that broadcast. Experiments, control protocols, the reduction protocol. If we release this alongside Brennan's testimony, they can't deny it." The three of them looked at each other, understanding the weight of what they were about to do. Once they released this information, there would be no peace, no negotiation, only war. "Do it," Jace said. Across human space, the broadcast played on every screen. In homes and bars and factories, people watched the images of their imprisoned neighbors. Mothers saw their stolen children. Workers recognized colleagues who'd disappeared. Soldiers realized they'd been serving the architects of humanity's subjugation. On Cade's ship, now limping toward the nearest human outpost, Sienna stood beside him on the bridge. The cost of their escape was written in the damage report scrolling across the screens. 2 crew members dead. Engine critically damaged, and thousands left behind on the prison world. "We couldn't save them all," Cade said, reading her thoughts. "But we saved some. And we told the truth." Sienna took his hand, her grip strong despite her ordeal. "That's more than anyone has done in centuries." Cade squeezed back, feeling the connection between them deepen. They'd met in horror but found something unexpected. In the darkest place, surrounded by suffering, they'd discovered they weren't alone. "What happens now?" Sienna asked. "Now humanity decides if it wants to stay in chains or fight for freedom." They stood together, watching the stars ahead, knowing the galaxy would never be the same. The prison beneath the stars had been revealed. The Council's mask had slipped, and humanity's rage was just beginning to burn. The Fire Spread's General Thora Wyatt stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Defiant, watching Council orders scroll across her command screen. Her hands trembled with barely contained fury. The orders were clear: suppress the riots on New Providence by any means necessary. Fire on civilian populations if required. She'd served the Council for 23 years, risen through the ranks believing she was protecting humanity. Now, after seeing Cade Brennan's broadcast and reading the leaked documents that followed, she understood the terrible truth. Every order she'd followed, every operation she'd commanded, had been in service of humanity's enslavement. "General, New Providence is requesting our ETA," her first officer said. "The protests are growing. Council enforcement has requested our support for crowd dispersal." Thora looked at her crew, good people, loyal soldiers who believed they served a righteous cause. How many of them had seen the broadcast? How many were questioning their orders as she was? "Open ship-wide communication," she said. "General, do it!" When the channel opened, Thora spoke with the voice of command she'd cultivated over decades. "This is General Wyatt. By now, most of you have seen the broadcasts from Lieutenant Brennan. You've seen the prison worlds. You've read the documents detailing the Council's manipulation of humanity." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I've received orders to fire on civilians at New Providence. Our own people, protesting against their captors. I'm told this is for the greater good, for peace and stability." Her voice hardened. "I will not follow those orders. I will not fire on humanity to protect those who've imprisoned us." Effective immediately, the Defiant is no longer under Council command. Anyone who wishes to remain loyal to the Council may take a shuttle to the nearest station. For those who stay, we have a new mission. We're going to help our people fight for freedom. Silence filled the bridge. Then one by one, her crew stood at attention. "We're with you, General," her first officer said, his voice thick with emotion. Thora felt tears prick her eyes. "Then let's go to New Providence. But this time, we're there to protect the protesters, not suppress them." News of Thora's defection spread through military channels like lightning. On New Providence, crowds in the streets cheered as the Defiant took up orbit. Its weapons trained not on them, but on the Council enforcement ships that had been terrorizing the population. In the capital city, Marcus Holt stood before a crowd of 10,000, his voice amplified across the plaza. He was a factory worker, nothing special, but circumstances had made him a leader. The broadcast had awakened something in him, a refusal to accept the lies any longer. For 300 years, we've been told the Council protects us, Marcus shouted. We've been told they guide us, that without them we'd fall into chaos. But what they've really done is cage us, control us, use us for their experiments. The crowd roared in agreement. Marcus felt their energy, their rage, their hope. It was intoxicating and terrifying. Cade Brennan showed us the truth. Dr. Halstead gave us the proof. General Wyatt chose humanity over blind obedience. Now it's our turn to choose. Do we bow our heads and accept our chains? Or do we rise? Rise, the crowd thundered. Rise, rise, rise. Marcus had contacted every resistance cell he could find across human space. The response had been overwhelming. People were ready to fight. They just needed coordination, leadership, a unified purpose. That's when Nora's ship arrived. The Wandering Star touched down outside the city, escorted by Owen's patrol cruiser. Nora, Jace, and Owen emerged to find Marcus waiting with a delegation of resistance leaders from a dozen colonies. Captain Vex, Marcus said, gripping her hand. Your name has become a rallying cry, the woman who risked everything to spread the truth. I just smuggled some data, Nora said uncomfortably. Cade Brennan is the real hero. Heroism takes many forms. And right now we need all the heroes we can get. Marcus gestured to the others. We're organizing resistance across every human world. But we're scattered, disconnected. We need a central command, people who understand strategy and logistics. Jace stepped forward. I'm a colonial administrator. I know how supply chains work, how to coordinate between distant settlements. I'm former council military, Owen added. I know their tactics, their response patterns, and I've been compiling a list of other officers who might defect if given the chance. Marcus smiled. Then welcome to the rebellion. We have a lot of work to do. Over the following weeks, the resistance transformed from scattered protests into a coordinated movement. Nora used her smuggling contacts to establish supply routes. Jace organized communication networks that bypassed council surveillance. Owen reached out to military personnel, offering them a chance to switch sides. The council responded with increasing brutality. Colony after colony faced bombardment for refusing to submit. But every atrocity only strengthened the resistance. For every world destroyed, 3 more rose in rebellion. Cade's damaged ship finally reached New Providence, where he and Sienna were welcomed as heroes. Marcus immediately recruited them for the resistance command. We need to rescue the prisoners you left behind, Sienna said at their first strategy meeting. Every day they remain imprisoned is a betrayal of what we're fighting for. Agreed, Thora said. I can provide military support. My fleet has grown. 15 ships defected after I made my stand. They planned the operation with military precision. A strike force would hit the prison world while simultaneous attacks across the sector drew council ships away. It was risky, but every aspect of rebellion was. During the planning sessions, Nora and Jace found themselves working late into the nights. Their connection had deepened through the chaos, a partnership built on trust and shared purpose. One evening, after reviewing supply manifests until exhaustion blurred the numbers, Jace took her hand. When this is over, he said quietly, assuming we survive, I'd like to see what life could be like. Together. Nora smiled, fatigue falling away. I'd like that too. Though I warn you, I'm terrible at staying in one place. Then we'll travel together. The galaxy's a big place. We'll have time to explore it without the Council's shadow. They kissed, a moment of tenderness in the storm of war. Around them, the resistance built momentum, but in that instant, they were just 2 people finding love amid the chaos. Elsewhere, Cade and Sienna had grown inseparable. She'd become his tactical advisor, her intimate knowledge of council prison systems invaluable. But more than that, she'd become his anchor, the person who understood what he'd witnessed and shared his determination to make it right. They stood together on the observation deck of Thora's ship, watching New Providence turn below. I never imagined I'd be part of a revolution, Sienna said. Before they took me, I was just an engineer trying to build better water filtration systems. And now you're helping to build humanity's future, Cade said. He turned to face her, seeing the strength that captivity couldn't break. I know we met in the worst circumstances, but I can't imagine fighting this war without you." Sienna leaned into him, finding comfort in his warmth. "When I was in that cell, I thought I'd die there. That no one would ever know what happened to us. You gave me hope back. I won't forget that." They held each other, two survivors finding solace, their connection forged in trauma but growing into something deeper. The Council's Central Command held an emergency session. The alien counselors, who'd ruled with such confidence for centuries, now argued in panic. Some wanted to negotiate. Others demanded total war. Counselor Zelthara, known for his ruthlessness, silenced the debate. "Humanity has proven too dangerous. They're like a virus spreading rebellion wherever they exist. We should have implemented the reduction protocol years ago." "That would mean killing billions," another counselor protested. "Better than losing control of the entire sector. If word of this rebellion spreads to other young races, our entire empire could collapse. We must make an example of humanity, complete and total." The vote was close, but Zelthara won. Orders went out across council space. Human colonies were to be cleansed. The rebellion would drown in its own blood. Marcus received intelligence about the new orders through Owen's military contacts. He called an emergency meeting of the resistance leadership. "They're planning genocide," he said bluntly. "No more pretense of order or protection. They want us erased." Silence filled the room. Then Thora spoke. "Then we don't have the luxury of building slowly. We need to strike at the council directly, force them into a fight they can't win on their terms." "How?" Nora asked. "They have superior numbers, better technology." "But we have something they don't," Jace said. "Desperation, fury, and nothing left to lose." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we take this war to them. We gather every ship we can, every fighter willing to stand, and we strike at the council's heart." "That's suicide," Owen said. "We're not ready. We'll never be ready. But if we wait, there won't be anyone left to fight." Marcus looked around the table. "I'm done running. I'm done hiding. If we're going to die, let's die taking them down with us." One by one, the resistance leaders nodded. Nora squeezed Jace's hand under the table. Cade met Sienna's eyes, seeing his own resolve reflected there. Thora began calculating fleet movements. The decision was made. Humanity would strike back, not with careful planning, but with the fury of the oppressed finally unleashed. The fire that had been spreading through scattered colonies would now converge into an inferno. The rebellion was about to become a war, and that war would decide the fate of every human alive. No more chains. The human fleet assembled in the darkness between stars, a ragtag collection of warships, freighters, mining vessels, and patrol craft. 300 ships in total, carrying every fighter who'd answered the call. Against them stood the Council's armada of over 1,000 vessels, centuries of technological superiority, and the arrogance of those who'd never faced real resistance. General Thora Wyatt stood on the bridge of the Defiant, now the flagship of humanity's rebellion. Around her, the command crew worked with tense efficiency. They all knew the odds. Most wouldn't survive the day. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer said. Thora activated the fleet-wide channel. "This is General Wyatt. Today we do the impossible. We face an enemy that has ruled us for generations, that thought we'd never rise. They were wrong." She paused, letting her words reach every ship, every fighter preparing for battle. "We're not fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting for the right to exist free of chains, for the prisoners still held, for the colonies destroyed, for every lie we were told and every truth we discovered too late. Today humanity proves it cannot be caged." The channel erupted with defiant cheers. Thora felt tears on her cheeks but didn't wipe them away. "All ships prepare to jump. Target, the Council homeworld. Time to show them what happens when you cage the wrong species." The fleet emerged from hyperspace in a blaze of light, appearing above the Council homeworld before their sensors could register the threat. Orbital defense platforms swung into position, but Thora's fighters were already among them, moving with suicidal determination. Nora piloted the wandering star through the chaos, now equipped with weapons she'd never imagined flying. Jay sat beside her in the co-pilot seat, managing shields and targeting systems. They'd insisted on fighting together, refusing to be separated. "Defense platform ahead," Jace called out. "I see it." Nora rolled the ship, plasma bolts streaking past her hull. She returned fire, her shots precise from years of navigating tight spaces. The platform exploded, debris spinning away into space. "Good shot," Jace said, gripping her shoulder briefly. The touch grounded her, reminded her why they were fighting. Around them, the battle erupted into full fury. Council ships poured from orbital stations, their formations perfect, their firepower devastating. Human ships fell by the dozens, but for every one destroyed,